Good morning. Thanks very much for your very pleasant music as a welcome. Thank you. Thanks very much for joining us here. Let me introduce myself. My name is Guido Baltes. I'm from Constance University of the Institute for Strategic Innovation and Technology Management. And here you are on IEEE International Conference on Engineering, Technology and Innovation, a conference with the Technology and Engineering Management Society of the IEEE. You see some seats are still open. We managed to negotiate sunshine for today, which is nice, of course. On the other end, it seems that the microphone is a bit not following the orders today. So we see how we manage. Well, we are welcoming you here in Stuttgart, the center of and capital of Baden-Württemberg. Thanks very much for joining the conference and actively participating. We are very much looking forward to 3 intense days packed with high-profiled keynotes, panels, paper presentations, and workshops. The ICE conference looks back on a proud history of 24 years, and it has always been a vibrant platform seeking to bring together the best and brightest from different worlds, from engineering and technology, as well as from social science, management, and innovation. In doing that, we have always strived to focus not solely on science, but on bringing technology to life, fostering lab to market. And we are very proud to have in this year's edition again a very balanced participation from both sides, from research institutions and universities, as well as from professional organizations and companies. The next 3 days are thus not only about presenting and listening, but also about meeting and exchanging. And we very much hope that you might find new friends, exchange with old friends, and that some new ideas and projects may spark from this community. Now, when it comes to ICE in Germany, I have to say one of the first ICE conferences has been hosted in Germany. It was in Bremen, far up in the north. And Klaus Dieter, who hosted this event now, is one of our board members. Later, when the ICE conference became more established, it visited the capital of laptop and lederhosen, Munich, and the engineering heaven in Aachen. Now ICE visits Baden-Württemberg for the first time, and we are very proud to have more than 400 guests throughout those 3 days from more than 40 countries. And we got more than 200 scientific contributions in various fields, aside from the numerous workshops that we are going to host on tomorrow's Tuesday and then on Wednesday. It's a fascinating and unique opportunity for our region to welcome the international technology management community here in Baden-Württemberg, an opportunity to discuss, to exchange on the future of connectedness, as it is going to deeply impact not only companies and competition, but also the society as a whole. And we are very happy to also have some of our keynote speakers addressing, in particular, that challenge. A lot of those challenges, in particular, are relevant to the region of Baden-Württemberg, which is why I would like to shortly introduce Baden-Württemberg to you. Baden-Württemberg, as the CEO of Trump said, you see that on the upper left hand, is somewhat like, in a way, the Silicon Valley of the manufacturing industry and a place of innovation and inventiveness. Well, this may be true because we do showcase one of the highest patents per capita ratio globally, it also kind of illustrates the challenges that we have. We have a business model that works pretty well, manufacturing industry. It operates on its highest peak. It is very profitable, but it's very likely not the future of our businesses. The future may be more featuring software, maybe more about platforms, and maybe less about manufacturing. And so this conference may also serve for raising the sense of urgency, in particular for these topics, and the need to change, because as we're doing financially very well as an economy right now, at least in part, our industrial landscape does not feel the need to change too much. And that's particularly true for our medium-sized companies, and that's kind of sad because Baden-Württemberg is indeed what we could call the home of the German Mittelstand. It's an economic powerhouse, as other regions in Germany are, and Germany as a whole. But some say we are a little bit different, more humble, which is why we tend to hide those companies, and some thus call those the hidden champions. This humbleness may also be the reason why we call family-owned businesses that have exceeded $1 billion in revenues still medium-sized. And a lot of those companies, however, are rather small, and I would like to give you a particular example. Small companies that are market leaders in their niche. Have you ever thought about how chewing gum is produced? Yeah, I've thought that. So I've brought you a chewing gum producing machine. This is the machine. And you may have guessed that the world market leader of those machines is sited in Baden-Württemberg. Small company, less than 100 people. Family-owned, operated, and family-owned in the 4th generation now. It's the company Gabler. Some, however, of those companies, family-owned companies, are more visible than those hidden champions are. And this is one example, not the guy, I mean the tool, right? The chainsaw, Stihl. Stihl is also a very good example of how connectedness actually impacts our industry quite severely. Until today, Stihl's unique success factors were the engines. Light-weighted, very robust, very efficient gas engines on tools for forest workers and landscaping. However, in 5 years from now, all those tools, or at least the vast majority of those tools, is going to be not gas-propelled, but battery-driven, featuring electric engines. And anything that you need to know and be able to do to produce a gas engine does not really help to have this other technology. And in addition to that, once we have batteries inside those tools, they will be connected to numerous sensors, platforms that offer quite a wide variety of service options. This will fundamentally change not only the technology know-how that the company needs, but also the value structure of the firm and their business model. And Stihl, of course, is not the only company that is subject to this change in facing those challenges. That's why we chose the notion of the Era of Connectedness as the focus of this year's 24th edition of the ICE conference. And we are very happy to see not only the international technology management community that followed our call to Stuttgart, but also a very strong participation from the region, and both from the political side, as we will be hosted tonight by our Ministry of Economic Affairs, but also from industry and science. We very much hope that the exchange between the international community and our regional community may support in tackling those challenges, and in particular, one challenge that may be the most crucial one for our regional economy, and that's the transformation of the mobility sector. What used to be an automotive industry, the core industry of Baden-Württemberg, a network of car manufacturers as well as automotive suppliers, seems to morph into a mobility service sector. This transformation, as you may see on those pictures, does not seem to be too much about how the future car may look like. It seems to be more about some fundamental questions as how are we going to manage the governance of inner city mobility? And how, for example, will autonomous vehicles impact this governance? Or whether we will still drive at all, but instead go up in the air and fly. It's not, I know, it sounds a bit strange, but things are accelerating, right? When we started thinking about hosting this event some years ago, Tesla was producing only hundreds of cars a month. It was not looking like transforming the whole industry. The diesel scandal was nowhere in sight. Uber was only active in some hundreds of cities in the US, was not questioning the existence of yellow cabs or the private ownership of cars. And Drive Now was just a purely BMW Germany experiment, no international operation. I was not part of a core of a mobility service operation, a joint operation of BMW and Daimler. We are going to shed a light on some of those questions with key players in that industry tomorrow morning in a panel. And we do have Volocopter on that panel, which is a Baden-Württemberg-based startup that tries to bring into life a kind of a drone type of cab vehicle for two persons that actually, Martin, really would bring us up into the air and out of the streets. But Baden-Württemberg is not only about cars, business, and science. We also know how to enjoy life and how to party, and thus the city of Stuttgart is not only the capital of Baden-Württemberg, but it's also the home of, how could I say that? Say, the better Oktoberfest, right? Stuttgarter Vasen. But Baden-Württemberg people take things seriously, right? And we do take partying also very seriously. And this may be the reason why the regional government of Baden-Württemberg does also support partying institutionally. So it's one of the few regional governments in Germany that does not only support business and science, but also the party scene. And they do this with their own state-owned brewery. So the government of Baden-Württemberg, you could say, is actively selling legal drugs. Following that tradition, you will be enjoying an exquisite social program. Tomorrow evening, we will have the gala dinner in the Hall of Legion, and somewhere during that evening, certainly, you will have an opportunity to get a taste also of this side of Baden-Württemberg. For the next 3 days, we very much hope that you may find interesting insights, new inspirations, as well as support for your own ideas and projects. And if you are here for the first time, we warmly welcome you and invite you to join this community also in the future, especially as we are already looking forward to next year's 25th anniversary edition. We will present more on that tomorrow morning at the occasion of the gala dinner. But for now, let's say enjoy your stay, have fruitful discussions, and a good time. Thank you. And now I would like to hand over to Mark Koenig, the head and CEO of the research part of this organization, BWCon, Baden-Württemberg's largest innovation network. The two of us, we share the honor of being the general chairs of this year's conference. As I said, I'm sited in Constance, very nice place to be, an awful place to get to. So we decided to have the location of the conference here in Stuttgart, and I'm very, very happy that we could work together and have this organization here, and Mark was very much responsible for all that happened here at the location Stuttgart. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Guido, for your kind introduction. So when Guido asked me to organize or be the co-chair of the conference as well, I was thinking what's our part at BWCon and in such a conference that is very much on technology transfer. And my thoughts, more or less, are presented now in the next slides. And I will give you an overview on what BWCon means because it's also reflected in the name of this conference today. BWCon in the long version means basically Baden-Württemberg Connected. And Baden-Württemberg Connected itself sees us as a virtual part of an international management technology community. And due to this today, we are very much also in this type, what all the people today call as digitalization, but digitalization is something that is not that is very new. Instead, BWCon was born in the first wave of digitalization in 1997, where the founders of the BWCon network basically went to the Silicon Valley and looked there how can we foster here in a region that is an economic powerhouse in Germany, how we can advance here also innovations in the field of ICT. We started in 1997 with large ICT companies here from the region of Stuttgart, meaning IBM, HP, but also SAP that are connected to Baden-Württemberg or have here their German or European headquarters. And today we are a network of about 600 companies, and not only typical ICT companies, but also companies that are more in the application of ICT in their processes. So today we have market leaders or hidden champions as membership companies that are also actively supporting this event today, like Trumpf, like Daimler, like companies as Steel, as well as Kercher, which are all located here in the region. And the objective of our network basically is to support innovation that are based on ICT and that are also connected to different applications fields, such as mobility, healthcare, manufacturing. And BWCon therefore also has an operative unit that is the BWCon Limited, which is basically the service provider for innovations for these companies. And we are supporting these companies in creating innovations and connecting, as we do it here today, and with basically 3 initiatives. One is a networking initiative. So the objective is that we meet on such events, connect our companies, but also the research institutes that are members of our network to other regions around Europe. And then we have a further unit that is mainly focusing on innovation, that's called Innovation Academy, where all the people that are a part of this network can use the offerings of our colleagues to bring their innovative knowledge or their technology knowledge to a business application. And then there's basically my department next to the research part. It's a department, a lot of people would say we are a kind of accelerator, but our aim is not to be only an accelerator for startup. Our aim is to help everyone who has a technological idea to bring this idea basically to the market. And how it basically functions, it looks like it's in the end, if we look at the market or now at these rooms, we have a lot of people sitting here, and all the people, some people have a large name on their business card and others not. But if we look at this room, we only look at the technology talent and the knowledge the people have and try to help them to bring this into a technological application that is sometimes protected by a patent, but not necessarily. In particular, if we talk about digitalization, this is often less important. And then there are 2 streams that we want to push, basically is helping to reinvent existing businesses, so making them better, making them more innovative, and also creating new startups, and also being open that they can compete in our network against each other with one particular objective, and that is to really help people to satisfy their needs in a better way. So because all this technology from our side in the end has to cater the humans and not just and function. So This is basically how BWCon is functioning, and there are two initiatives we have also on this conference that are directly connected. So if you look at your welcome package, you will find something that we call the Venture Development Manual. And if you are a technology talent or also see in the market a need that could be better satisfied with technology and with technology maybe also from this community, you can use this, and it will guide you through a standardized process to a new business case. And we are then very happy as BWCon to support you, to get finance for it, to connect to our member companies, to connect but also to an international community. And you can right now, if you have this idea, start developing on that. And further initiative that we will in detail introduce to this community on Wednesday afternoon is that we looked at all the paper submissions, and we looked at the paper submissions not from an academic perspective. Instead, we looked from the paper perspective if you can business out of this, if you can create a business out of these research results. And we invited, I think, 12 papers for a workshop, and we will on Wednesday have a pitching session for early and for a little bit later stage, startups, new business development initiatives in front of investors. So, and this will be something that we will also in the future contribute to this community, trying to really also get new business insights out of the research results here. And we have there also great support from our network, because this new format is supported by Bansbach, which is also one of our membership companies. And we are very much looking forward to advance this idea in the near future with you together, and also to bring also in the next 25 years, I hope, something new to this community. So thank you very much from my side. So if there's anything to complain about the event, I'm the person who's responsible. So if something works well, you can say it to my colleagues, which have the staff sign. So then I can hand over to you, Guido, again. So
With that, I would like to hand over the stage to Dr. Reinhold Achatz. Mr. Achatz is Chief Technology Officer of ThyssenKrupp. And if I may say so, when we talk about the transformation of the industrial landscape in Baden-Württemberg, one of the notions or part of the discussion is whether we create another Ruhrgebiet down here in the south. Because the first very strong industrial center of Germany was the Ruhrgebiet. You may have read about that, you know, all the mines, the steel producing. And from all those tycoon type of companies that we had there, ThyssenKrupp is about the only one that survived, formed as a merger of the two companies that actually survived, Krupp and Thyssen. And now, unfortunately, change is not over. They have to transform again. And I'm very happy to have shared with Reinhold a part of my time in my first life when I was in industry at Siemens. He has been at this large German industrial conglomerate in a similar function. Reinhold is talking today about the digital transformation journey of ThyssenKrupp. And in particular here, as I took it, it's a bit of a transformation from the paradigm of productivity, a manufacturing logic, into a paradigm of connectedness, more a digital paradigm of services and solution. Thanks very much for joining us. Please come up to the stage. Please welcome Mr. Reinhold Achatz.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for having me today, because it's really a pleasure and an honor for me to be here. It was already mentioned, ThyssenKrupp is a company which is basically more than 200 years old, at least the companies which formed ThyssenKrupp. And if you want to become more than 200 years as a company, obviously have to change, and you have to change several times. And I think, by the way, the digital transformation is sometimes as well called Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. And ThyssenKrupp is old enough to have survived all the industrial revolutions, and so we are pretty confident that we will survive this industrial revolution as well. And by the way, this picture is taken in one of our factories, which is not in the Ruhr area, it's in Ilsenburg, not too far from Wolfsburg, and we are producing automotive components, and you may guess for what customer we are producing those components when we talk about Wolfsburg. Okay, and a very short introduction to ThyssenKrupp, because ThyssenKrupp basically in many areas is known as a steel company. But when you look at the portfolio of our company, you see that we basically, besides steel, we have a very strong components business, which is automotive business. We have elevators, escalators. We have a very strong industrial solutions business, chemical plants, cement plants, all kinds of plants. We do services on materials. So when you fly with a Boeing airplane, there's a pretty good chance that the material used to build this plane was managed by ThyssenKrupp people. So a very broad spectrum. And last but not least, we still produce steel. And I clearly say still produce steel because in the moment we're discussing with Tata Europe to merge basically our steel business with the Tata Steel business of Europe to form an even stronger player in steel. And I think in such an international audience, there's no need to explain to you that the steel business is under pressure by politicians in all parts of the world, not only in the United States, by the way. Okay, and but to be so old and become so old, you have to be sustainable. And when I talk about sustainable, we define sustainable in three ways. On one hand, you have to be profitable, otherwise you will not survive so long. But you have to live in accordance as well with society, with your people, with employees, with the countries you're working in. So this is very important. And last but not least as well, you have to take care of the environment. This is basically our paradigm, our belief that we have to be sustainable and how we define sustainability. This is not only recognized by ThyssenKrupp, this is as well recognized from the outside world. I think obviously producing steel and producing cement, we're coming from a pretty bad rating, the D rating, which is pretty much the worst you can have. But we worked our way up to an A rating in the year 2015 and 2016. In 2017, we got an A rating. And in 2016, the top 10 companies had an A rating. In 2017, only the top 5 companies had an A rating. So this is getting pretty tough now. And when you look at the German DAX companies, or the German companies, 7 German companies have an A rating. And when you look at the DAX companies, it's only BMW, Deutsche Telekom, and ThyssenKrupp. How can a company become an A rating or get an A rating basically with still producing steel, still producing cement plants in environmental topics? It's very simple. On one hand, you have to create transparency. That means you have to be very open and very frank what you are producing, what is your environmental footprint. And when you have basically set a baseline, then you have to set yourself challenging targets, and then you meet the challenging targets. And this is exactly what we did. So we made a baselining. Everything is public, all the things we are doing. Then we set the challenging targets, and in the last years, obviously, we met those targets. So this is something where we're going on. And this basically will lead us as well in many ways into the second half of the century. According to the Paris Accord, we want to be CO2 or greenhouse gas neutral in the second half of the century. And this is another talk, so I don't want to continue, but obviously there are big efforts as well on the energy side and the CO2 side. Now coming back to the topic, I think ThyssenKrupp is a German company, a German engineering company, and so the German word for engineering is Ingenieurkunst. So basically we were and are very proud that we can really produce and engineer many things, many products, many solutions. But this will not work any longer in this world. I think we definitely have to add something, and I clearly say to add something, which is the elements of the digital transformation. And when we talk about the digital transformation, we're talking about digital products or smart products. We're talking about digital operations. And this was mentioned earlier today already. We are talking about new business models, obviously services, smart services based on software. But the key element of the whole discussion is we need to create value. Because if we're not creating value for our customer, obviously we will not survive as well. So the differentiation of the classical companies of ThyssenKrupp will not be that we will become a software company. The differentiation is that we will combine our classical skills with software skills, with IT skills, with connectedness, as it is discussed today. So this is a clear differentiation. And by the way, this is not so easy to copy. When we talk about the companies in California, like Google, Microsoft, and others, they are pretty good in all those digital skills, in digital tools, in digital development. But they have pretty much difficulty to go into the real world, the tangible world. And you look at Google X and other companies who really try to do so, and you see how hard it is when you visit them there. But this is basically our differentiation. We say we have to keep our classical skills, we have to keep our customer intimacy, we have to keep the understanding of the data of our customers, and then add our digital skills to basically to use those data. And this is not only theory, obviously. We're talking about a lot of technologies. We're talking about additive manufacturing. We're talking about human-robot interaction. We're talking about big data analytics with advanced algorithms. We're talking about industrial IoT, clouds, platforms, secure customer data exchange. We sell products over the internet. We help our people and our customers with augmented reality. We train people with virtual reality. We work on autonomous systems, and we build data-enriched products. So it's really the full scope, basically. It's basically the list of topics of this event where we're working on. And this is not only theory. When you look at those pictures, and don't worry, I don't explain each of it, basically, we really do it. The only problem we have in the moment, the number of people working those projects is pretty limited. So we have our lighthouses, so we know the technology, but now, basically, ThyssenKrupp is a company with 160,000 employees. Now the 5,000 employees which know the technology have to convince the other 155,000 that is the right thing, the right way to go. So we know the technology, we have the technology, but now the big effort for us is to bring it into the whole company and to make the whole company in a transformed company, in a digital company, which combines, as I said earlier, the classical engineering skills with the digital skills. And I give you some examples. I think one of the most exciting examples from our point of view is electrical steering. Fits pretty much in this area as well with the big automotive companies. When you look at steering, in the past, in the beginning, steering was mechanical, but then the cars got faster and heavier. So basically, we had hydraulic steering, and now in today's world, we have electric steering. That means we are replacing mechanical components with electronics, and software. And this is exactly what's happening. That's called mechatronics in our world. So we are coming from a classical mechanical world and going into a software world. And the differentiation of our steering today is software. So I was driving on one of our test centers a car, and the engineers are sitting in the back seat, on the back seat, and I was driving. Basically, now you feel you drive a BMW, and I felt the road. Then they made a software switch, some software switches, and now you drive a Mercedes. So it was driving very soft. And then they took all support away, and it was very hard to keep the car on the road. So it's basically software is defining our steering, and this is exactly the change we are going through, coming from mechanical, still knowing how to build the mechanics, because obviously everything is built on the mechanics, but the differentiation now is software. And we have a business in the moment, an order backlog of 8 billion euros. 8 billion euros is even something for a company of the size of ThyssenKrupp. Why that? Because this is a next step to drive-by-wire. We have the first drive-by-wire project with the big companies, and eventually it will be autonomous driving. And this is a car driving with ThyssenKrupp software autonomously on a racetrack. This is obviously one of our customers' car. This is one of the cars we built ourselves for testing purposes. So this is basically one good example. We're coming from the mechanical side. We combine the mechanical know-how, the engineering know-how with software, and then we have a combined product. Pretty much the same in the elevator business. I think this is the so-called multi. It's an elevator without ropes. So we replace the mechanical component rope with magnetic forces, and magnetic forces are controlled, again, by software, electrics, and electronics. This is exactly, again, the same thing. Replacing mechanical through software and electronics, digital transformation in a very profound way. And this is, by the way, tested pretty close to this area in Rottweil, not too far from Stuttgart Airport. This is the highest test tower of Germany, the highest observation tower of Germany. If you have a chance and when weather is nice, visit us and go there. But this is really a breakthrough and a change in the way how we think transportation, because this elevator will not only go up and down, it can go sideward as well, and you can put as many cabins as you want into a shaft. That means you can create a flow of people, and a flow is always more efficient than going up and down. So we reduce the service space of a building. That makes a building much more efficient, so the builder can basically sell more office space, and this is what they're living from. They make their living from. So this is basically something, and no limitations anymore of the ropes. You can build a building as high as you want to, and you basically as well can move in any direction. And I believe this will create mobility in a densely populated area in future, because this will change the way how architects think. And the first building, by the way, will be built or is built in Berlin and will get operational in 2020. So we are in the phase of commercializing now. The other thing is basically pretty much a similar thing. I think you know what it is a walkway, and the classical walkway is driven by a chain, a mechanical component chain. What we are doing, we are replacing the mechanical component chain, again with magnetic forces. And when you basically step on this walkway, the only elements are overlapping. And when you are on the walkway, we are moving them apart because they are elements of a linear motor, so we can control them individually. And this accelerates you 3 times. That means when you go from terminal A to B in future, you can be 3 times as fast as today without being accelerated in a way that you cannot stand anymore, because this is the critical part. When you step on it, you accelerate people, and this is a limitation of today's walkways. But when you accelerate while you're stepping on it, you can accelerate it as fast as you want to. In the moment, we're doing it 3 times. Again, we are replacing mechanical component chain with electric magnetic forces controlled by software, and this is our digital transformation. On the other hand, I think many people, if you know what this is a Microsoft HoloLens. We call it ModLens in our application, and this is supporting our service people. When they work in an elevator shaft, it's pretty narrow, it's very hard to hold a tablet or a PC or so, but they want to have connectivity, though they are connected with video and audio with a service center, and they basically can call anytime the service center with augmented reality. They get additional information in their glasses. And this is something how we support basically our service people. In the meantime, we have 5,000 units in operation, so we're working on it, and we have some experience. And to be honest, some people don't like it. They say we don't want to use it, but most of our service people are excited about it. So obviously, it's a change of culture. Are you accepting it? Are you ready to adapt, or you want to do it old way? And this is another application of this HoloLens. We are building as well chairlifts specifically for elderly people, or people which need support. And when you basically call to get a chairlift, you really need it. So the engineer is going to the customer side, and today they take a yardstick, measure all the steps, and specifically in Germany, all the stairs are very different. So it's very individual, again, very much German engineering. But with this HoloLens, we basically measure it by just pointing at some points of the chair, and then it's automatically calculated how the chairlift will look like. Then we transform this picture on a tablet, and then we can show the customer, this is how the chairlift will look like in your house, and exactly is already can be produced according to those measurements. And when the customer says, yes, I want it, and by the way, 80% of the people do because they really need it, then we push on a button, and then the measured data are transferred, automatically connected to the factory, and we can immediately start production. So we reduced our shipment time from 8 weeks to 2 weeks. Basically, this as well. We sell more because we can handle more customers at a time, and obviously we are much faster in the business. This is, again, clearly creating value for the customer. And this is, from my point of view, what digital transformation is about. Many people are talking about the digital twin as well. By the way, this is the digital image, and this is a real image, and it's hard even to see the difference. So basically, we build factories. We build factories which build cars, for example, and we build those factories in a computer just virtually. And then we do the full testing of the system simply without any hardware. And when the system is up and running on a computer, then we implement it in reality. This reduces commissioning time dramatically, and obviously reduces our cost as well dramatically. So this is a great feature, how we really can reduce the tedious setting up, changing, testing at customer side, which is a very high effort. So it's really, again, creating value for the customer and creating value for us. The same is available in a chemical plant. ThyssenKrupp builds as well chemical plants. And with this chemical digital twin, we even have a simulation, a model of the whole full plant. And we can test ways of operation even. So it's not only commissioning, it's as well running the plant. So we test different ways of operation. And when we found the best way of operation, then we transfer the parameters from the digital plant to the real plant to the plant control and operate it. So it's not only a commissioning tool, it's as well a tool to run and optimize plants while up and running. The other thing is basically augmented reality. This is in a steel factory. We can project the steel data or the material data on the sheet, on the steel sheet, and obviously quality control is getting pretty easy because you have all the data on hand because we are connected, we have a lot of sensors. It's basically a totally integrated system here. Then now we are talking about virtual reality. I think many people of you, and I think all of you know those computer games, virtual computer games. You run a roller coaster and sort of thing. Why not run a ship? We're building ships as well. And while ships are built, the crew is trained in a virtual model. We have all the components, elements digital anyway. So we built basically a digital world where the crew is trained while the ship is built. And when the ship is ready, basically the crew can go on the ship and can operate the ship seamlessly because they already trained while the ship was built. So that's virtual reality, and that's not the only training opportunity. I think we train people as well how to handle walkways or gangways towards an airplane on airports. Or we as well train people how to help to land a helicopter on a ship. Though there are many ways where we replace the hardware, again, through digital tools, through software, which reduces a lot of cost, reduces time, and makes everything more efficient. So again, it's about creating value through a digital transformation. Big data is a big thing for us, and as I said earlier, ThyssenKrupp is a classical company. So we know the data, we have the data, we know our customer, we know the process of our customer. So we optimize mining, so we take videos from the shovels of big mining equipment, and then we basically can check as well as the conveyor belts, for example, and then basically we can look, is there something going wrong? Basically, do we need to replace a part? So we can work with predictive maintenance, we can replace parts when it's necessary. So this is something we're doing. By the way, it's the same. This is an electrolysis system. Here we're producing hydrogen, and green hydrogen will be one of the key elements of the digital transformation and the energy transformation of Germany. Basically, we can control each single element, and then it makes more sense to exchange the element because there's some degradation. Then we can basically optimize it and exchange in the next maintenance phase the next element. Same thing with plant intelligence, optimize productivity with a chemical plant the same way. This is a very exciting topic as well. This is a ball screw production. And in the past, we basically were measuring 3 points. Today, we're measuring more than 7,000 points, and obviously we can be much more accurate, and obviously we're working with neural networks here, and now we can be much more precise in deciding what is a good part and what is a bad part. And even being in a high 90% rate of good parts, we could increase the number of good parts by 2%, which is pretty much a big difference in a ongoing production. And this is basically simply because with artificial intelligence, we could understand, and machine learning, we could understand how good parts look like, how bad parts look like, and this is improving the output of our factory. And another very exciting topic from my point of view is something we built in what we call a garage, which is a project or a number of projects where we basically allow young people in ThyssenKrupp to create new ideas. And this is a sensor we put in a car. It is basically the fitness tracker of a car, independent from the car manufacturer. Basically, when you manage a fleet, you have different car types. And with the sensor, you basically can track the behavior of the driver and the behavior of the car. And obviously, for a fleet manager, It's very important to understand how cars are treated and how cars are managed. And maybe when you rent a car in future, you pay for the wear you create, the treatment of the car, no longer for the kilometers or miles you run the car. This will happen, obviously, as well with data transferred into the cloud and then analytics on the data in the cloud. One example I mentioned already is human-robotic collaboration. And this is basically real artificial intelligence application as well, because the robot is observing the people, is obviously understanding the situation, and is acting accordingly. So it's not machine learning, but it's already artificial intelligence in real life. And this is something which can be seen in factories. It's not something which we do simply on slides. And by the way, this is a really heavy robot lifting heavy motor parts. So again, creating a lot of value for the customer, for the value for the worker here. I will conclude my talk with something which is, from my point of view, very important, not only for ThyssenKrupp, but as well for the rest of the world. We're talking about big data and data exchange. I think when the paradigm of the internet today is, as soon as you put data into the internet, you basically lose control of the data. This is, I think, maybe acceptable for us as single people, as private person, but it's definitely not acceptable for a company. And for that reason, many companies are hesitating to basically share data. This data ownership is getting more important, but on the other hand, by sharing data, obviously you can create a lot of value. And now, how do we solve this conflict? And our idea is basically, why don't we put a system in place which we call international data spaces, and we formed an association. It started with industrial data space. Now the medical people understood that there's a good advantage for sharing data. Now there's a medical data space, there's a material data space, there's a logistics data space. For that reason, it's called international data spaces. And the idea is basically to have a secure data exchange between clouds, basically, or between data sources. And the classic idea is we don't only share the data, but we attach a contract to each piece of data. And this contract describes expiration date, so we have a digital rubber. It describes the access rights, so what are you allowed to do with the data, and the cost of the use, so this allows to create business models. And now basically when this is happening, and we already have the first examples of how we do it, we as well can build agents for us, and the agent goes into the internet and say, I need this and this data, I'm ready to pay so much for it, and I'm ready to accept those boundary conditions. And then two agents can negotiate, close a contract, and then the data can be transferred according how you set the parameters of your agent, what kind of contracts are you ready to close. This is the infrastructure. Obviously, we need connectors. You need an app store where you can download contracts, where you can download apps. You will obviously need a clearinghouse because we need a trusted environment. So it's not so easy, but this is basically what we are providing. This is a safe data exchange discussion. In the meantime, and this is part of this element as well, many people, and this is basically not only creating the control, usage control, but as well access control. This is a combination of it. For example, when we send printing data for a 3D printer, you can say you are allowed to print 10 parts, and when you want to print the 11th part, the contract says or system says no, you only have a license for 10 parts, buy another license. So this is basically one application we can do here. And I think obviously many people are talking about blockchain today, and this is part of this conference as well. There's a good complementary activity, blockchain to industrial data space or international data spaces. Because what we are doing is in industrial data space or international data spaces, we attach contracts for transaction. Blockchain is documenting transactions. So basically when we say yes, we want to have a contract, then we use the industrial data space. When we need a clear and neutral storage and neutral documentation of the contract, then we use blockchain. And the moment we basically discussing use cases where we say yes, we use both in one element, one system, when we basically need contracts for exchange of data and a clear neutral documentation. In factory environment, normally we know our partners, so we don't need blockchain. But when we go into the internet and we don't know our partners anymore, then obviously blockchain is very helpful. And I'm sure this will be discussed pretty much in this conference. And my colleague Frederick Knoll will hold a speech or a discussion on that in one of the breakout sessions tomorrow. This is not only ThyssenKrupp doing it. In the moment, we have 90+ members. Basically Huawei from China, quite a number of German companies. We have American companies joining as we speak. So this is really a movement, and in the moment the membership is accelerating quite a bit. Just to give you one use case we did in ThyssenKrupp, and by the way, if to emphasize, it's a very simple use case. We are transporting heavy material, so we are transporting as well coils. Coil is basically sheet metal. And one coil is 10 to 15 tons. And these coils are normally transported with trucks. And the Ruhr area was mentioned, and the Ruhr area has one disadvantage: there's always a lot of traffic because a lot of people are living there. That means trucks are either early or either late. But as we have to prepare at our logistics center coils which are 10 to 15 tons heavy, so it's not so easy to store them, put them on a site when the truck is not on time. We basically are pretty much depending upon trucks being there on time. With industrial data space, we basically share the truck location, and we optimize basically that when the truck is really arriving, not scheduled, when it's really arriving, that the coil is at the front of the logistics center, and we can match it automatically because we have clear data exchange. And this is available on one hand with truck management systems, but as well when we have single truck drivers, it's on the smartphone of the truck. So this is a connector as well for industrial data space. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
No, thanks very much. Is there any question from the audience right at this moment? Then maybe I would like to pose a question. The things that you have shown are quite impressive, and shows how much ThyssenKrupp has changed already. I guess this has not been going on without any pain. So what were, like, from the organizational side, the strongest challenges that you came across, the hurdles that you felt?
I think obviously it's, from my point of view, changing the culture of a company. Because as I described earlier, we have people which are successful over many, many years. And now we are coming basically and saying there's a paradigm shift, and the classical success factors you were working on and which made you successful will no longer be valid. We tell them there will be new business models, there will be new businesses. So we basically change their world, and this is not so easy for successful people to accept. For example, when you are in big trouble, then under big pressure, obviously, then you're ready to do so. But when you feel I'm successful, and why should my business not go on? And you described it for the German Mittelstand earlier. ThyssenKrupp is a big company, but we have a lot of divisions which are basically pretty similar to Mittelstand. And this is basically the communication we have to make. We have to convince the people. We have to train people. This is one element. And the other element is basically get enough well-trained people. Because we are going through a paradigm shift, and as we speak, we're really going through a paradigm shift. And there is no way of getting all the people we need from the outside world. So from my point of view, and I spoke as well to the German government, we were invited by Chancellor Merkel 2 weeks ago, 40 experts discussing exactly how does Germany manage the digital transformation. And one of the big discussions with the Chancellor Merkel was basically, how can we train people we have today? Mm-hmm. Because we have great universities, but there's no way of creating so much talent in a university at this time. So on one hand, we need trained people from the university, but as well, we have to train our own people. And this is something which is not so easy, and obviously here we need support as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna, before you leave the stage, we have a guest gift to you. It's not the case for you, but some of the keynote speakers come from really international places. We thought you would be short on luggage, so you can eat it before you leave. So it's not really difficult. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And having said that, I'm coming to one of those international speakers, and I'm very much happy to have Martin Kenny here up on stage. Welcome, Martin. Martin is from University of California, Davis. He is an expert in industry-university relationships and regional economies. He has been studying and researching, in particular, the dynamics of entrepreneurial high-tech regions. And lately has, in particular, worked on the social impact of platforms and new technology, how that transforms the future of work and what the impact may be on workers, whether they will be augmented by those technologies or rather replaced. And then there is another fact, and I have to say that, Martin, anytime you go for a dinner with Martin, he will choose a really excellent wine. Because UC Davis is right next to Napa Valley, the wine region of California. So if you really want to have a nice wine, make yourself a dinner with Martin. Thanks very much for being here. Your stage. Please welcome Martin Kenny.
Yes. Thank you, Guido, and thank you to the sponsors of this, this wonderful conference. I'm going to give a deliberately West Coast perspective. And I think it was wonderful because Reinhold gave a German perspective. And you'll be able to see the differences in the way the two places are thinking. And, you know, one is not right or wrong. I think what's going to happen is going to be kind of a merger of these ways of thinking. So what I'm going to go through is something that John Zeisman and I at Bree have been thinking about, which is digital platforms and the platform economy, and I'm going to focus on the West Coast firms. Okay, and I'm going to go through a few interesting slides to give you a perspective of how we think the world is changing. Okay, so in the platform economy, metaphorically, the reorganization of the capitalist economy is in which digital platform owners are developing power that is stronger than that of the factory owners in the Industrial Revolution, or even Ford with his assembly line. Data, in some sense, is the new oil. And algorithms and software are the capital goods that create and extract value and create wealth. And I think Reinhold was actually pointing to that when he talked about the software in these machines, because that software is capital too. Algorithms are always changing and always evolving. The other thing that we're seeing is a world of constant change, right? The Google search algorithm is evolving every day or every 2 days, and every 6 months it's evolving in a big way. Okay? So when you think about a world like that, this is a world of change that is at an accelerated rate because it's in the software and it's in the data. Life is being reorganized. The way people are getting news and information is being rewired. We know that. The New York Times, et cetera, is not the only way that people are getting information. My students don't get information by reading the New York Times. I talk about reading a newspaper either online or physically, and they look at me and they think I'm crazy. I'm in some other world. 33% of all US marriages started online. That's happening. It's just the way it is. I mean, those are your customers. At the end of the supply chain, maybe San Trope is down very deep in the supply chain, but their customers are dealing with that world that's changing. Supervision, rating systems. Today, I was just in China, I said, oh, how do you know a restaurant? And we look at WeChat. WeChat tells them which restaurant to go to, right? Not the reviewer for the New York Times, et cetera, or for Spiegel or whomever. That's changing things profoundly. Privacy. Well, even in Europe, you're worried about privacy, but with facial recognition software out on the street, well, who knows about privacy? And so these issues are changing our world and change the world that all of us work in, be the academics or industry leaders. Platform giants. Most recently in the US stock market, seven of the 10 most valuable firms in the world were platform firms. In 2002, there was Microsoft, and then all these other firms that have dropped out of the leadership role in valuation. Now, maybe we're in a stock market bubble, but does anyone really believe that these firms are going to drop out in value terms. 2 of them are Chinese. Tencent and WeChat. Tencent on Alibaba. That's a big change in our world. It's showing major shifts that are not just digital, shifts that are whose economy is rising, et cetera, et cetera. All of the countries are going to have to play in this new world. This is Google. These are Google products. It's a straight line because I don't have points, right? But Google and Android are there at 2 billion users. 2 billion users globally. How many people are there in the world? 8 billion? 2 billion users. I use Google Drive. Oopsie. Google Drive over there. Introduced in 2015, 750 million users. 3 years. That's kind of a lot of people, particularly if you can't have the China market. You're closed out of the China market. Just to give you a perspective of some of the changes that we're looking at and some of the changes that are going to affect all of us, are affecting all of us, and will continue to affect us over the next 10, 20 years. This is the messages per day, various platforms. WhatsApp, over 50 billion messages a day. You want to talk about connectivity? What kind of connectivity is this? Right? And, of course, this is in the consumer side. This is sort of where the Americans and the West Coast are very powerful. But those messages are going to be in the industrial world, too, in a different way. But that kind of connectivity is one of the things that we're dealing with. Yes, your Mittelstand and your industry is a little further away from the enormous speed on the consumer sector, but we believe at Bree that it's going to affect all sectors. This is Amazon. Amazon, as we all know, started selling books up there. They have 32 million books available on Amazon, 400 million different SKUs, different products available on Amazon, both from Amazon itself and increasingly for all of the shops on Amazon. If you look at Amazon's growth in sales, the shops are actually growing faster than Amazon itself. Amazon is organizing the retail trade. Retail is being reorganized today. In the United States, I can't say about Europe, I don't know. In China, for sure. WeChat is reorganizing and Alipay are reorganizing retail in China. You can talk about China and the US. I don't know about Europe, but my guess is you're going the same direction. So, not only that, Amazon Web Services. Amazon is integrating down into the logistics chain. In the B2C sector today, but in the B2B sector tomorrow, right? Electrical parts distribution. Why can't Amazon take that over? Amazon's got the trucks. Amazon's got the warehouses. Amazon has the air freight. Amazon now has its own ships, right, to connect with China in particular. But what's so interesting about Amazon? In each of these, not only do they have their own ships, they contract out to UPS, to FedEx. So they contract out that way, so they can compare. They can put base load, they can take the base load, they can give the peak load to UPS or FedEx. How would you like to be in a business like that, where you get peak load and I get base load? Not only the other side of it is, for their sales, they will offer, if you sell as an Amazon shop, if you sell, they will offer you to do your warehousing for you. Both sides, platform after platform. Every red is a new platform that they're creating as they're driving down into the distribution, the warehousing, the wholesaling system. Europeans are worried about Google. They should think about Amazon. Amazon is the giant. Google is a giant. Amazon is the one that's starting to change the way things are being distributed. Just giving you a flavor here of the kind of research we're doing at BRE. And so I'm going to go through this very quickly because I don't have enough time. Retail. This is e-commerce as a % of retail sales. The red line is China. That's the smartphone right there at 2009. This is transformation. 10% of US retail is now online, growing about 0.75% a year. 45% of that is Amazon. In China, that's Alipay and WeChat Pay. Disintermediating the banks. Banks, fairly important institutions in society, have to understand where they may sit in the future. United States and Europe are all behind. South Korea has now dropped behind. And China's continuing to grow. Continuing to grow as a %. Online brands, new online retail brands. You could start a store today in your house, start advertising on Instagram, start advertising on Facebook, put your shop on Amazon, connect to the global supply chain to have your product made in China or Bangladesh. You've got a brand. You've got a product. You're a company. And you can do it 2, 3, 4 years. If it gets hot, you know how your children are using their smartphones. If it gets hot, they'll know about it and they'll buy online, particularly if you give them a nice credit card, right? This is happening. This is kind of old stuff, but it's happening and it's going to happen even more quickly. If you're Hermes, you have to think about what is your strategy in a world like this where a new quality brand could appear very quickly and start to undercut you. Okay. Machinery industries. Guido asked me to put a slide in here. I'm not an expert on machinery industry, and after Reinhold, I feel embarrassed, so I'll give just a few thoughts. They may be completely out to lunch, but we'll try anyway. So, is the machinery industry different? Yes. Digital and analog are different. That ability to know the atoms, right? I come from UC Davis. We've got this stuff called wine, right? Virtual wine. I don't know how many of you are interested in it. But, those are atoms. So, we have to be careful. So the digital and analog are different. No. As Reinhold pointed out to us, software is increasingly an important part of every machine his company makes. No, all software will not be open sourced. He gave us some examples of how you're going to deal with that when you have to share data, but you're sharing the guts of your firm. So what are the boundary resources you need? So, proprietary software will still be the norm in some way. So that tension will have to be dealt with. But the customers may push you to conform. You need to conform. So the pressure is going that way. Well, firms with very specialized skills can resist. I'm sure Reinhold and his firm are always thinking about what kind of resistance as my customer is pushing me to open the kimono, right? Or his vest. He's always thinking about that. He has to think about that. So that's a tension that the machinery industry will deal with that's different from the consumer side. Okay, it's different from the consumer side. But some of the pressures are still pushing, I believe, on him. No AI can substitute for the worker's skills. Skilled, trained labor remains vital. I mean, that's what you Germans have done so well. But how you're going to make that balance in a more turmoiled world, where those skills may have to change more quickly, I think is one of the issues you'll deal with. We need skilled labor, but often our tools can de-skill either our labor or our customers. With the wonderful robots that he's developing, maybe his customers don't need the skills that they had. the Italian packaging industry. The packaging machineries will continue, but the people in the factories that are doing the packaging, Coca-Cola, their skills may decrease. So these are some of the tensions we need to think through in the machinery industry. But as I said, I'm not an expert. Guido asked me for a slide, so I gave some ideas. The automobile value chain, fairly important for Germany. The interesting thing about digital is it's sneaky. It seeps in places where you never would have expected it, right? And each of those may change a different part of the supply chain. So, supply chain platforms, assemblers, suppliers. Who controls the platform? Whose software is there at the center of the platform? That's a place for value extraction from the whole chain. Car sales. Car sales in the United States have changed completely. Used to be the dealer knew everything and you knew nothing. Today I buy a car, I look online, I find out more or less what the price is. I go to 3 dealers, I say, these are the prices. Which of you give me the best deal? Then to the local guy, I say, the guy across, 50 miles away, he's giving me this price. Either you give me this price or forget it, I go to him. And the local guy always does it, right? Because he doesn't want to lose the business. But that's changing the customer relationship. Didi, Uber, Lyft, Reinhold, and everybody's mentioned that. Maps. Baidu, the German auto industry buying Nokia Maps. Nokia Maps not as good as Google Maps. Will Google, with its maps, be able to extract the value? And how much of that? Well, there's X amount of value. If I get 10% and you had 20% and some of it has to come out of you, I'm the winner, right? That's what Google's looking at. Google's looking at, they don't want to make cars. They might make some cars, but that's not it. Get the maps in there, extract the value. Data upload, download, we've talked about that. Autonomous vehicles, another possibility. So Reinhold again took all of my thunder. What is the driving experience when it's an autonomous vehicle? Right? These are the kinds of issues I think we need to think about. So the value chain will change, and therefore value creation and capture are likely to change. It's capitalism. Who captures the value? Right? Microsoft software captured far more of the value than the cost of the software they developed because they were able to extract it from the rest of the chain. That's what this story is about. So some concluding thoughts. Platform owners will have great power over those in the ecosystem. In the industrial side, of course, the firms are going to think a lot more about giving away the core. The consumer side is quite clear what's going on. How will the consumer side map on the B2B side? We don't know yet. Chinese payment systems are becoming a duopoly. What happens when a payment system becomes a duopoly? There's 2 ways to pay. WeChat, Alipay. Credit cards, oh yeah, a little bit, but right? What happens then? If I can control all the commerce, will I be able to extract extra value? Of course I will. Amazon becoming the dominant retailer affects not only the other retailers, but it affects FedEx and UPS. Indirect effects. As these big changes in the supply chain occur, there's not only the direct effect, but there's the indirect effect. Have to think about these. And these are going to be very powerful. Industry boundaries becoming blurred due to data. New entrants in a particular part of the supply chain, of your full supply chain. Right? So not just new entrants directly against you, but against your whole value proposition, little pieces of that value proposition. But it might be a little piece that can be transformed into a big node of power and control. These are the kinds of things that I think managers today, I know, are thinking about, but become very, very, very hard to predict because as boundaries blur, it's hard to say where your competitor is coming from and in which part of your business. Okay, the new entrants. right? I have some slides I wasn't able to show you of new entrants in various businesses. But what's so interesting is they're not in just one part of, let's say, retail. They're in a variety of different pieces of retail, right? So again, a firm is a set of functions that they perform to create value. Any one of those functions may be attacked. It's hard to say which one will be attacked. Okay. Value chains can receive new intermediaries with data. New intermediaries appear. If they can get, again, a foothold in that chain, they start to change where power is. Okay, so I need to wrap up here. Customers. Who are they? Where are they? Right? These online brands, the customers are global, right? Who are your customers and where are they and how are they changing? Because they're changing also. Again, perhaps this is more B2C than B2B, but I think it's important. How do they get information? How do people get information today versus how do they get information yesterday? And how will they get information tomorrow? Right? Because you're dealing with tomorrow. How do your customers, here more B2C, how do customers experience their lives? I'm always struck when I see young people. I'm blessed to be a college professor of young students, and I'm struck every 3 to 4 years, it's completely different. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Right? It's that quick. And does anybody use Facebook anymore? Your parents, right? Me, right? But nobody else uses Facebook. My students don't use Facebook. They use Instagram, which of course is Facebook, but what do your customers want and need? What are the experiences that they want and need, and how are they different? How does a firm communicate with customers? Another issue, changing constantly. And then, of course, who mediates the relationship with your customers? Today, for Nike, who's mediating the relationship with their customers? To some degree, Amazon, right? So these are some of the issues that we're thinking about and trying to think through at BRE. We obviously don't have answers, but these are what we're interested in. What is Europe's place? Is it just reining in the West Coast firms in some way? Is that a positive vision? Protecting old models of competition? Obviously, here in Germany, you're starting to think through part of that with the Industry 4.0. Who are the European champions? Is it Spotify? This is simply not an important firm, to be blunt. It's a very successful firm. There's no reason today that, particularly in the spaces I'm talking about, that Europe will generate a competitor that will be better than the American giants, but you never know because the industry is changing constantly, so it's certainly possible. To build platforms based on another set of social values, could it be privacy, social solidarity, et cetera? I think that issue is on the European agenda. Do you have a vision that's compelling? Because if you don't, Google and Amazon, clearly, you look at your children, look at yourself, have a compelling vision. The Chinese are developing a compelling vision. Will it get out of the China market is a little bit difficult. It already is outside. Tencent, for example, has about 25% of the global gaming market now. So, you shouldn't count the Chinese out in this. And China is very serious. And we're getting technologies like AI and machine learning that may again change. Who's the winner and who's the loser? So I think you in Europe have to think, you may want to think, you don't have to do anything, you may want to think about, do you have a compelling vision for the rest of the world? Because the rest of the world is changing also, even as you're changing. So with that, I will end, and I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Martin, for your views. In part, I guess, very good that we have a little bit of a pause to kind of let that sink in a little bit. If I may have one question on that. I mean, you've clearly shown and said that in your wrap-up also that there are all those American giants obviously being very successful in forming those platforms. How do you rate the social impact? So is the fact that you have those players in the US resulting in, say, something like a better economy, welfare, and well-being of the society as a whole?
Well, so I mean, that's a very good question, and it isn't just the digital platforms that are affecting American inequality and the issues in the United States about, you know, fairness, et cetera. So it isn't just the digital platforms. It's, in a way, it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, many of you probably use Amazon and like it. Some of you might use Google search and find it valuable. Some of you may use Wikipedia. So these are creating value, social value. Now, the way the wealth that is being created is being distributed is another question, right? And I think that's a question that we in the United States are not addressing, but we certainly should address, is wealth distribution. Because I didn't go into digital platform economics, they tend to be winner take all. How many of you are not using Google search? Probably very few of you. How many of you are not using probably Gmail or Chrome, right? So they tend to be winner-take-all markets. In winner-take-all markets, right, it isn't like Reinhold competing against Kone. No. Reinhold's not in the game in the digital space if he's not the winner, right? So the distribution is very different. You can have Kone, you can have Dyson Krupp, you can have Otis, et cetera, et cetera. So you can have a number of firms competing, right? Search, it's Google, Facebook, right? So that makes income distribution very different and wealth distribution very different because it's all concentrated at the top, at the winner. So I think we as societies, not only the United States, but global societies do need to think about if this industry goes very digital, how will the wealth be distributed? Who will be the winners? Who will be the losers? I didn't talk about ecosystems, right? All of these firms create ecosystems. But the owner of the ecosystem, the platform owner, is always in a position to extract wealth from everybody in the ecosystem or look at a particular business that you created and say, I'm going to now put this in the platform. The torch on your smartphone was developed as an app by an entrepreneur for Apple. And Apple said, this is a wonderful thing, and it should just be pulled in and put into the phone. Where was the app owner then? It was zero, right? So we're talking about power. And so I think you're raising the question, and that is the role of the state. What is the role of the state here? Right? The US general feeling is we don't need the state anymore, right? Uber doesn't need the laws. They're going to do what they want, right? Break the rules and ask forgiveness later. And that's sort of a US perspective, which creates enormous dynamism. But I think also creates the other side, which is the potential for great inequality. And of course, we're leaders in creating great inequality. That's a negative. I'm smiling, but it's negative. So I don't know if that's a good enough answer to your question, but that's sort of how I think I'm thinking about these issues.
Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts. Martin, I think it's a very challenging situation, and I think the role of the state is something that we would, or that we should consider significantly. And let's say that we are a little bit behind digitalization in Europe is a chance, at least in this aspect, we have a little bit more time to discuss as our industry is transforming a little bit later than it did already in the US. Thanks very much for being here, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
And with this, good evening and a very warm welcome here at the reception of the 24th ICE conference. at this beautiful location, the new castle in the heart of Stuttgart. And we have beautiful weather, and I hope you all had a very good and inspiring day with a lot of input, I assume, and effective sessions over at Hospitalhof. And now starts the even more enjoyable part of the evening, and I'm very happy that I will be guiding you through this evening and through the program that lies ahead of us. My name is Anja Lange. I'm a freelance presenter based here in Stuttgart, and I often present events in the digital and startup environment. So I'm very happy to be welcoming you as authors and industrialists, engineers, practitioners from all over the world in engineering, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So welcome again here in Stuttgart. So we will be hearing a few keynotes tonight. We have some wonderful speakers here tonight. And then we will all come together on stage for a Q&A session, so you can ask all the questions you have to our speakers. But first, I'm very happy to be welcoming on stage the General Conference Chair of the ICE Conference 2018, Marc König from BWCon, and Professor Dr. Guido Baldes, Director at IST Innovation Institute. Welcome on stage. So, how was the day till now? Was it a good day?
I think so.
We have to ask the audience, right?
Exactly, yes. But
before we just frame it was a wonderful day. You know? It's like, we just assume it is, and we don't know. We don't want to know the truth, right? So keep us our illusions.
Minor complaints about you.
So, sorry. In the last 24 years now, the ICE conference was at many different places, also in Germany. But why exactly is it this year in Stuttgart?
It's a good question. So Guido asked me.
I know.
It was. So, yeah. Why? I guess one reason is because we pitched it some years ago. Actually, the reasons why we pitched to have ICE in 2018 in Stuttgart, when we did that in 2015, were quite different than if you would ask me, why is it a good thing to have this conference here today? I said this morning. In 2015, the world was somewhat different than it is today. And if we look at Baden-Württemberg as a region in Germany today, we have huge challenges to change the business model of our manufacturing industry to a somewhat more software service-driven type of business model industry. And that challenge was not that severe when we discussed this in 2015. I think it's much more crucial these days. And the second thing maybe is that what also changed, that the change in the mobility sector is quite more visible these days. And yeah, as you all know, automotive industry is quite an important part of the industrial sector in Baden-Württemberg. And also, this is a very good reason to have today the ICE conference here. So what I would say is, whatever we thought in 2015 would be a good reason, it was different. The reasons we have today, I think, are a lot better. And this is why I would like to really thank the audience and the community to join us here in Stuttgart today. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And when we're thanking people, I think you want to thank our supporters as well?
Yes, sure. I'm not sure if it's on the slides.
I think we saw it in the video.
You saw it on the slide. So we really want to thank you, all the sponsors we have, in particular the state of Baden-Württemberg, for this evening today. So it is a very important part of the conference, this reception. And also we want to say thank you in particular to Trumpf and to Mr. Pop. So Andreas, you was one of the persons who really supported us in also creating this video. So without your support and your close connection to Trumpf, we wouldn't have get this nice video. So it's a special person we really have to point out here this evening. And but all the other people who helped us also from sponsoring side was very important to get a conference here and to make these events happen. So thank you very much for supporting us and also for bringing in content onto the conference.
Mm-hmm. What can we expect this evening?
Yeah, you know, some of you may have listened to what I had as an opening speech this morning. I tried to sketch a little bit the industrial landscape of Baden-Württemberg. And the industrial landscape is very much driven by those family-owned, very successful businesses. And what we can expect are 3 examples of those. 2 very obvious ones. These are our 2 keynote speakers from company Festo. Festo is at the heart of automation. So we just discussed before we started the reception this evening that actually it's quite a challenge for that company that has on the one hand side products I just learned are 74 years still active in the market, on the other hand side are actually driving integration of AI in production landscape. It's a several billion in revenues company, still family owned. And then we have Trumpf, also a company, and you saw that a lot of the footage in the video obviously is from Trumpf. Their machines, you see, they also managed to print one of our ICE logos in their 3D printers, and here we have the same. So on the one end, we have production technology that actually drives the transformation in the production sector, but on the other hand, still rather traditional, even if it is high-tech, but rather traditional products. And then there's a third example, not that obvious. That is our Ministry of Economic Affairs. Mr. Scott Hofmeister. Your family actually owns Bizerba, which is also one of those, not that hidden, because if you go to a German shop and you get some slices of cheese or whatever, you'll see the machines. So one of those very leading, medium-sized, successful businesses that we have here. So you share some of that experience yourself, and at the same time are responsible for, in somewhat, that transformation in Baden-Württemberg. And I know that you're aware of the challenge, and we, I guess, will hear a little bit of how you tackle that tonight. And I would like to warmly welcome, last but not least, John Zeisman from Berkeley University, who is very well-renowned and has worked a lot on the question of how the economic change that we see currently impacts the workforce and what the future of work may look like. We've touched into that just a little bit in the opening session tonight. I'm very much looking forward to your keynote this evening that will again deepen the thoughts here. Thank you.
The topic of this year's ICE conference is the era of connectedness. What exactly is meant with that?
I mean, so we, as I introduced in the morning, so digitalization is always about connecting something and connecting people and connecting it with ICT technology. And for us, there are 2 major sectors that we see that this changes the business slightly or a lot. It's basically mobility and Industry 4.0, and today we will discuss Industry 4.0 as one of the areas that is changing, in particular the economy here in the region. And on the other hand, tomorrow we will have a longer plenary session on mobility, and also there we see this connecting cars, connected mobility solutions that is changing business models, that is changing economy as it is today. And due to this connectiveness, it was the thing we discussed a lot also in the board of the ICE conference, if this is really the right title. But we found that it is, and this is in particular also what BWCon, my organization, is working on, connecting things with ICT and bringing new technologies in the market that are based on ICT and that are connected to something else.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this opening. Big applause. So we've already just seen it in the video, and we've heard that she is completely convinced that Baden-Württemberg and Stuttgart are the perfect place for the ICE conference. Our next speaker, she's from a small city here in Baden-Württemberg, but studied and worked in different countries across Europe and Germany, but she came back to her hometown, to Baling, and was elected by direct mandate into the state parliament. 2 years ago, she was appointed Minister of Economic Affairs, Housing and Labour of the state of Baden-Württemberg. So please give a very warm welcome to Dr. Nicole Hofmeister-Kraut.
Thank you very much. Dear Mr. König, dear Professor Baltes, dear Professor Süssmann, dear Dr. Melzer, dear Dr. Nestle, dear ladies and gentlemen. I would like to warmly welcome you here in the new castle, the representative center at the heart of our state capital. We are very pleased to be this year's state hosting your prestigious conference. The topic of your conference, the Era of Connectedness, the future of technology, engineering, innovation in a digital society, was very well chosen and draws attention to a paradox. On one hand, in this digital age we are living in, the level of international economic connectedness and interdependence is continually increasing. And on the other hand, we are seeing a global trend towards nationalism and isolationism, of which the President of the United States is the most prominent and loudest example. And I think that the current tensions between the USA and its Western allies are not least connected to this interrelationship, which Professor Süssmann, who is here today as a guest, already accurately described in the 1980s. At a time in the 1980s when everyone else believed that an economy's level of modernity could be measured by the share of economic value added provided by services. You, Professor Süssmann, wrote a book with the title Manufacturing Matters, the Myth of the Post-Industrial Economy. And together with your co-author, Stephen Cohen, in your book, you warned against replacing manufacturing by a services economy. Your position was that high-tech services are inseparably linked to controlling the production of goods. Lose manufacturing and you will lose your competitive edge, high-tech capabilities, as well as much else. That was what you posited at the time. History has proven that you were right. And today, Donald Trump's policies can also be understood as an attempt to bring back America's old industries. I believe that his approach is wrong, but I can entirely understand his wish to re-industrialize his country. Because the success story and the economic strengths of our state, Baden-Württemberg, proves a strong industrial sector is and remains a fundamental guarantee of prosperity and progress. Out of the economic statistic figures for our state, 2 are significant. In Baden-Württemberg, the value added by industry as a percentage of aggregate value added is 33%, an extraordinarily high figure. And in recent years, this percentage has not decreased, as happened in most other comparative countries looked at in the study. Instead, the figure has rather tended to increase. The second figure relates to the research and development intensity, in other words, to the expenditure on R&D relative to the nominal GDP. For Baden-Württemberg, this figure is 4.9%. That is by far the highest percentage in all of Germany, and also internationally, it comes out on top. In our state, a large part of expenditure on R&D, which of course also feeds into software and services, is funded by industry. As a consequence of this, the economic developments in our innovative state of Baden-Württemberg are positive. Our technologies and products are in great demand, and internationally we are present in all important markets. This has been demonstrated for years by a consistently solid growth, an export rate for manufacturing of 55%, and an employment rate which verges on an employment miracle. In May this year, our unemployment rate was 3.1%. This makes it very tempting to just say, keep going. And yet, for us, a simple keep going, or even to rest on the laurels of our previous successes, isn't an option. Because far-reaching transformation processes are already underway in industry and society, processes which are also the focus of your conference. First, the increasing individualization of customer preferences requires an ever-increasing range of variations, culminating in products manufactured to the customer's specifications in batch sizes of 1. Second, a fundamentally new understanding of mobility, which no longer only revolves around a single exclusive means of transport, but instead consists of an intelligent combination of different vehicles and means of travel. And third, an environmental awareness which is becoming more and more firmly established in society, represent a further challenge for our economy, not least for the automotive industry. And I'm convinced that the digitization of manufacturing systems and products is the right approach to transform these challenges into opportunities. And the most recent advances, for example, the comprehensive digital integration of production processes, or the harvesting of big data and the interpretation of this data using artificial intelligence, make it abundantly clear that we are already in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. The strong industrial base in Baden-Württemberg is not only the result of the dynamic growth of the automotive industry. A global hub for industry suppliers has developed alongside the automotive industry. And I'm glad to be able to say, here in Baden-Württemberg beats the heart of the German machinery and plant engineering industry. And it's complemented by a highly innovative electrical engineering industry and by world-leading suppliers of business software. All the core competences to make the future of production, Industry 4.0, a reality are therefore present in our state. Already today, many companies in Baden-Württemberg work intensely at promoting digital interconnection of value chains. 1/3 of all best practice projects shown in the map of the National Platform Industry 4.0 are located in Baden-Württemberg. In Germany, the cradle of Industry 4.0, this makes us the leading region. Our pioneering companies are already demonstrating what's possible today when you intelligently and seamlessly connect processes. Trumpf and Festo, both of which will be presented to you in more detail afterwards, are two excellent examples of this. However, the digitization of production processes will only be able to fully develop its potential if all the links in the value chain are connected consistently and comprehensively. My goal on the path to the manufacturing of the future is to take all companies with us, in particular the small and medium-sized companies across our state. Highly specialized and internationally operating medium-sized companies are a hallmark of Baden-Württemberg, and that should continue to be the case in future as well. So what is our contribution? In our Alliance Industry 4.0, we have therefore brought together all central state authorities, companies, research institutions, and cluster organizations to create a close cooperation between all players. The results of our activities are convincing. Today, if you ask our machinery and plant manufacturers, you can be sure that you will be offered intelligent systems for highly flexible, consistently digitized production. And these systems will be optimized to suit your very specific circumstances. Dear ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow's mobility will also be focusing on customers' personal needs and preferences. Today, the answers to many questions are still unknown. Will we still be driving cars ourselves in the future? Or will everyone with a car soon also have an electronic chauffeur awaiting them at home? Will we even want to own a car? Or will we soon depend only on self-driving robotic cars, which we can order via app when we need them? And finally, what will it mean to be traveling in an interconnected world of transportation? A world in which vehicles and infrastructure are constantly communicating with one another. Will this mean that accidents and traffic jams could at some point be a thing of the past? In addition to the major objective of emission-free driving, it's especially by issues such as interconnectivity, autonomous driving, and the sharing economy that the car and the automotive industry as a whole are currently being reinvented. I do not think that I need to explain to anyone here that these developments I've just mentioned particularly affect us here in Baden-Württemberg, in the middle of the land of cars. You will probably not find more knowledge and expertise on all matters to do with automotive vehicles in such a confined area anywhere else in the world than you will find here in Southwest Germany. Together, we are in the process of shaping the transformation process, which will lead us into a new digital age, into an age of sustainable and intelligent mobility. My ministry has launched a whole package of measures aimed at strengthening the innovative capability of small and medium-sized companies in this process. This will allow us to create the conditions for Baden-Württemberg to continue to be the premium location for individual mobility, even in the digital age. Dear ladies and gentlemen, digitization doesn't stop at national borders. It enables global cooperation even more. I would like to invite all of you to work together with companies and research institutes in Baden-Württemberg to create intelligent solutions, new services, and new business models. You will already have an opportunity to do so at this ICE conference here in Stuttgart. And I would like to thank BWCon and Constance University of Applied Sciences for organizing this conference. And I would like to wish you a few inspiring and stimulating days here in the innovative state of Baden-Württemberg. A warm welcome also from my side. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Nicole Hofmeister-Kraut, also for this invitation you just taught to our audience. So, our next speaker, he is on the management board of an independent, family-owned company that always distinguished itself through innovative products and technology. New and good ideas are also very important to them, and they cooperate a lot and support with startups. And they are a global player with their headquarters here close to Stuttgart in Esslingen, a beautiful city. The pneumatic and electrical automation technology company Festo that we already heard a few times today. And its director of product and technology management. He has a background in mechanical engineering and a PhD, so perfect speaker for this conference. So welcome Frank Melzer here on stage.
Dear Dr. Hofmeister-Kraut, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here at that renowned conference and take you to a tour through the future of industrial automation. And it will be more a technology-driven tour, as I'm the CTO of Festo. And so technology is in the heart, but we see a lot how this interacts into our future, into the business, and also how it interacts to us as part of the manufacturing industry. Well, Festo has been mentioned a couple of times already, and Festo, to describe Festo by numbers, it's more than 300,000 customers, 33,000 catalog products, and 3 billion euro turnover. We are a family-owned business and very, very global, in 176 countries active, and very proud to be a Swabian, really Swabian company. So we combine the world and Swabia in Festo. And it has been mentioned we are a product company for factory and process automation, with namely a pneumatic and electric automation. And as a product company, I start my tour, of course, with a product. But with a different product, if you think of. I start with a Nokia 3210. Who had one in the past? Yeah, we have a lot of fans here. And this is a true classic product. Not only this is just an icon of design, and probably you can find it in many museums, it's a classical product, single function, robust, designed for the customer, and then it works. What do we use today? We use the smartphone. All of us use the smartphone. And the big difference here is it has much more functions. It has sensing, intelligence, it has communication, and software-based functions. We all are surprised that calling is a minor function, and my kids are surprised that you use that for calling. So it opens up the space for all of us, the smartphone. And why did I start with a consumer electronics product? Because it's not much different in industry. We have these classic products, and it's an air preparation unit here, and we still have very classic products, but on the other side, we have the same unit, air preparation unit, equipped with sensing, intelligent, communication, and software-based functions. There's one difference, and I just mentioned it. We have in our portfolio both products, because we deliver to very classical industries where this is a replacement, but we also have these new products for a multiple way of usage. And how are they connected in a factory? And automation industry typically takes the so-called pyramid. That's a very hierarchical system, how it's being organized. In the lower level, in the field level, are the components, and they talk to a central unit, to the controller. And with Industry 4.0, we added the cloud on top of that. This is still the picture mostly automation industry works, with this simple picture of a pyramid. But there are a couple of problems with that. First of all, bandwidth. You have to channel data through really a bottleneck, and then of course real time is quite a challenge. So with technology moving in, that pyramid changes to a network, the industrial Internet of Things. Here, controller moves into nearly all products, intelligent is distributed, and everything is connected. So we can send data across, and we can send data across the different products and not along that pyramid anymore. That opens up a new space for us in automation technology, driven by the availability of sensing, communication, computing. And for the next step forward, I take you on a small history tour in IT. It started around 1900 with tabulating systems, and the driver was in the US, the Census 1890. And big data at that time, how to manage big data, and the punch cards were there. big machines. And the paradigm shift was the computing as we know today of 1950s was the evolvement of the computer. And then there was a bigger step in 2015. And we will have that in our books of computing and IT. That's when artificial intelligence, or namely machine learning, went finally after many, many years of research and hidden into real life, the cognitive time started, cognitive systems started. All this has one thing in common. Huge computing, huge machines were necessary. Now we are a component manufacturer, and industry consists of many, many different components. So there's a big challenge now with bringing artificial intelligence on resource-constrained systems. Less power, less data transfer, and a requirement in real time. And the component you see here is one of the first components where on a small edge computing we have equipped real-time machine learning. So it's there. We can build data models and find with machine learning abnormalities of machines and components. Really interesting field opened up. A new world of data analysis started, driven by reducing the requirements of the machine learning to real-time applications on the fairly small edge computing. And coming back to the larger picture, how that interacts, and I like that picture because it's an interplay between a machine learning or artificial intelligence and the human. And it's not either or, it's an and. Both or all the different parties communicate each other. We see human-machine interaction, we see machine-to-machine interaction, and we see optimizing of these processes. Artificial intelligence is there in real time, and in future we even see real-time interactions, not only between human and machine, but also between machine and machine. And this is not too far away. We are on the edge of having that reality. And it's not with or without the human plays a really important role in that cycle with its intelligence, with the learning capabilities, but will get some load from his shoulders with the repetitiveness, with the correctness, what a machine can do. And that opens up new spaces for us. Looking again for a broader picture, manufacturing will be interconnected. We will see a horizontal and vertical integration, and it's nearly on the hand when you see all the connectivity issues we can solve today. Data is everywhere. Data can be outside, can be inside of the company. We still have a lot of question of data privacy and who owns the data. But in principle, we can do among industries, among companies, businesses. And solutions in that space are not longer purely proprietary. And we think the next step is a global and especially a very open ecosystem. That's technology spoken, but also from a political side that has some parallels. With the open system, we can do much better business, and that will be what we will see in future between companies. In talking about the business model, and there's the analogum from the mobile phone. The Nokia was also built and it was given to the user, and many of us use it still today, and there was little interaction between Nokia and the user. It's very different with a smartphone. All of a sudden there's value, there creates new apps, new possibilities, you send data through, and a whole new world of business model is evolving in that space. We all know of that. And it's the focus on value creation in smart services. There's no difference in industry. With the product on the right-hand side, with the air preparation unit, which is connected, we can exchange data in the space of the customer, within the cloud, within the manufacturing, or a cloud somewhere else. We can communicate, we exchange data, and we've seen that with this data exchange and sensing and intelligence, we can save 30% of energy in pneumatic systems in the manufacturing. Because we can control it, we can see it, we can adapt it to the particular needs. And that's a service on top of that based on software, and it's a value service. We have lots of customers who are asking for that type because it brings them out of the pure mechanical world into a flexible, controlled world, optimizing their needs. And energy saving is certainly one of the needs a lot of manufacturing has. And to the end of that quick technology tour, I want to show you what we did with different technologies at Festo in a concept phase, bringing different technologies together in designing the workplace of the future. This is a concept we showed at Hannover Fair this year in March. It's a conceptual stage, but gives you a good glimpse how the technologies come together for workplace of the future.
Ready to manufacture the individualized product phase Peter 2018.
Okay, let's go. But let's make the stand first.
Starting cutting process. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So thanks a lot for taking part in that quick tour on the future of automation, and looking forward for the discussion afterwards. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much. And we go straight over to our next speaker. And as Mrs. Hofmeister mentioned in her speech, in Baden-Württemberg there are so many companies that are world leaders in their technology, and they're all within so close proximity here, as we saw in the video. And the CTO of the high-tech company Trumpf said in the video here that we just saw, Baden-Württemberg is like the Silicon Valley of the manufacturing industry. So after Festo, Trumpf is another good example for this. They are based in Ditzingen, just a few kilometers away from here, and are one of the world's largest provider of machine tools. Our next speaker, he is the head of corporate research and development at Trumpf. So welcome, Volker Nestle.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Mrs. Hofmeister-Kraut, Mr. Melzer, very impressive presentations again. I have to say, really stimulating. Myself, I left Festo 2 years ago, and I had been working for Festo for 27 years, so I know the company very well. And I have to say, again, really impressive how you arrange and how you show the products and the possibilities of interconnectedness in the future production trade. I want to talk a little bit about the digital lead, how Trumpf steps ahead towards digital transformation. So we come a little bit more from the product side. We do not come from the product side like Mr. Melzer did, but a little more from the strategic side. And I want to show you some insights into Trumpf's strategy, how we move forward in digital transformation. First, to start, I want to give you a short introduction about the business areas where we are in, because we have lots of students and people here from economic sciences. Trumpf is a machine tool company from the origin. We do produce and sell machine tools for flexible metal sheet production. But Trumpf is usually known as a laser company. So laser is the central technology that we are in. And we see here in the revenue shares that the lasers are, oh, this is not holding, that the lasers are the revenue share from 1.2 billion, and the machine tool sector at around about 2.7 billion. But of course, we sell also our own lasers in the machine tool sector. Just to give you a short idea about what TRUMPF does. Before I move forward and before I take you into the future or our actual doings and our strategy, I want to take you back, like Mr. Melzer did also when showing us the technology side, in a retrospective, and I want to show you the influence of innovation drivers on TRUMPF's history and TRUMPF's group revenue, because we think that those innovation drivers always correlate with company growth. And the first innovation driver was copy nibbling. I won't go too much into detail and explain what copy nibbling is, but actually copy nibbling was one of the main innovation drivers or the innovation drivers in the 50s and 60s, and it increased productivity at the customer side, and therefore we were able to sell a lot more machines and had an increase in revenue too. The second innovation driver we know was in the 70s and until the mid-80s, of course, numeric control. You know numeric control as a big innovation driver in the machinery industry, and it was the case for TRUMPF as well. So again, increase in productivity at the customer side and then increase in selling machines. And third innovation driver in the end, and this is it so far, was in the mid-80s when TRUMPF decided to buy or to acquire a laser company. Everybody said, hey, what are those guys from the machinery industry going to do with a laser company? But we acquired this new company, we acquired this new technology and integrated it into the manufacturing engineering, and this new tool, the laser, was the basis for the most important company growth in the past, and is still the biggest innovation driver until today. But of course, we ask ourselves the question, what's the next driver? And I guess we all, as we're sitting here, we all know it already. Of course, it's the digitalization, and there are lots of possibilities coming along with digitalization. Our future is digital, networked, and intelligent. That's what we believe, and we see new technologies that will offer great opportunities. And I go into detail a little bit in four main areas. The first one is platform economy. We heard that from Festo too. We think in new business models, we think about new competitors coming from different branches, not necessarily from the manufacturing trade, but for example from financial sides. We think in network effects, new business models using network effects to generate turnover. Second point, networking. Networked machines, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things. We already heard that also from Festo. A very important point where we are going into. Third one, data and analytics, was also already mentioned by Mr. Melzer. Things like cloud computing, getting your machine into the cloud, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence are technologies that have to be developed and have to be applied to your product range. And in order to do data analytics, to be capable to apply data and analytics, you of course have to get the fields out, the data out of the field of the production side. Therefore, you need sensors. Therefore, you need robotics to get into action back in production. So we actively shape the change along those main fields of action. And here's a side of our Chief Digital Officer. He is quite a known person here around Stuttgart. Mr. Kaumüller, he says Trumpf is one of the leading companies in network production already today, and we will expand on that base. So the digital transformation is, again, now the biggest opportunity for growth in our corporate history. That's what we believe, and we will work on that goal. What does it mean to go into digital league, and what is the ambition behind that in a, let's say, short-term horizon? 5 years, not too long, but we want to define goals that can be reached also. So we have 3 categories in our digital ambition. First one, and probably most important one, the customers. Second one, the company itself, Trumpf, as a matter of fact and a matter for transformation. And of course, and I want to explicitly highlight the employees, because we have to take the employees along with us in this transformation process. So digital ambition in a 5-year horizon. On the customer side, we try to make the customer more successful. We create digital solutions to inspire our customers to use digitalization by themselves. That's especially for SMEs very interesting because they can get into interaction with us. We want to increase their productivity, their flexibility, and of course also their speed to market for an optimum batch size one. We want to reduce complexity of our machines, quite complex machines as you have seen, while increasing the transparency at the same time. We try to achieve 0 unplanned downtime. That means machines run whenever they have to run. And we try to be available 24/7 with sales and service for the customer. For our company ourselves, we try to expand our market strength and also technological leadership in our core markets. Not too far away from today, but we want to apply digital solutions in the core markets first. We are establishing also a new profitable area, and this is called Exum. Some of you might heard of it. It's an industrial Internet of Things cloud solution. It's a separate company where we want to apply and foster the emergence of new business models and the integration of Internet of Things. And we want to increase our own productivity and by the same time reduce processing times of the main processes towards the customer. And as explicitly highlighted for the employees, for our employees, we want to create a positive experience in terms of digitalization, because digitalization often comes along with bad feelings. Hey, may I lose my job? Fear, losing the job, and we want to take away that fear from the people and create positive experience for digitalization for them. Of course, we have at the same time to develop their skills, further develop on the skills by opening up new development opportunities and career profiles, and in order to motivate them to go with us along this way of transformation. Just a short look at the strategy that's behind this digital ambition. We have several digital priority areas. You see 2 sides of the story. One side, from your side, the left-hand side, Trumpf as the user of digital business processes, where we try to fulfill an internal digital transformation and as well as smart factory solutions for our machines and lasers. And an external perspective on the topic where Trumpf acts as a provider for new digital offers. But that's a little bit far further in the future. I want to highlight the digital enablers that lie beyond this whole thing, that lie beyond this digital strategy. And on the first side, the left-hand side, you see the technical enablers, which we all know very well. You need a proper system architecture, you need a data structure, data quality, and then you can apply data analytics. It's all fine, but it's all technical. And The thing that is often neglected are the organizational enablers, like partnering networks. Who do you have to cooperate from supplier side, from customer side? Small companies, startup companies with good ideas, we try to bring them together with Trumpf to make a really good solution out of it. The second point, structural organization. How does digitalization affect the structure of the company? We make a lot of thoughts about that because the mode of operation, as you see on the right-hand side, may change. Projects, NPI, does look a little bit different today, or will look different in the future in comparison to today. We come from a world with waterfall organized projects, and we move to a world with more agile and iterative processes. And this will also affect the structural organization as well as the mode of operation. And of course, we have the employee skills, which we have to further develop in order to motivate them. Just to prove that we are doing anything and that I'm not just telling you something that we thought about in theory, we have several projects running in digitalization. First of all, we introduced and established the CDO organization. That means all digitalization topics belong to Mr. Kammüller. We have more than 30 transformation projects running at the moment with more than 500 people involved. And I think this is a central success factor to get the people involved into projects and to get the people in touch with this transformation, this digital transformation. We did more than 5 acquisitions and foundings of new companies to enlarge our competence set, our skills. We have more than 40 customers in Exum, actually, and still growing. So we try to get more traffic on the cloud platform that we have. We applied innovative learning formats and have several trainings for Industry 4.0. We run a smart factory in Chicago, for example, where you can test and prototype some new business models along a future production scenario. We have TrueConnect consulting for networked machines. We have our lasers in real-time monitoring approaches at the customer, so we try to get the data and do some data analytics with it. And we have, at the Ditzingen side, digitally networked metal sheet production, as well as in Gellingen, on the other side of the Autobahn, where we see automated order processing or man-machine interaction between robots and human. So lots of things going on at Trumpf, but I want to highlight again, and that's the key message and takeaway of my talk, that our dedication is that we jointly shape the digital transformation. It's not only a technical thing, we have to take the people with us on this transformation process, and therefore we try to create an open and positive attitude towards digitalization topics. We try to ask questions. We motivate to ask questions, we motivate to address uncertainties, just to give the right answers to the employees. We motivate to discover opportunities for improvement and to contribute ideas also for permanent improvement within the company, and we motivate the employees for lifelong learning strategies. We stand for secure jobs. Job profiles, tasks, and processes will change, but we will manage the change together, and that is the key message and takeaway for you, because we at Trumpf, we think the employees are the key success factor for future growth, for sustainability, and therefore we have a strong and intensive look at the development of our employees. And that's all I wanted to say. The rest we will take in the talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Volker Nestle, for those insights. And I think this is also the perfect introduction for our next speaker or the next topic. Our final speaker, before we then all get together for the Q&A session, is John Seisman. He received his BA at Harvard and his PhD at MIT. He's now a professor of political science at the University of California and co-founder of the Berkeley Roundtable on the International Economy. He has published a great number of books and articles on European and Japanese policy, and he's obviously always traveling to those countries. He just told me he has to go straight to Berlin, then to Japan. So I guess very, very busy. And his most recent articles, they are on the future of work, platform economy, innovation, technology, and obviously the digital economy. So I'm very honored to be welcoming John Seisman. Welcome on stage.
With a last name, well, first, let me thank you all for being here. Thank you, Minister, for your kind remarks. We clearly share two views. One, manufacturing and industry is changing, and two, the global challenges are as daunting as you characterize them. Thanks to the organizers for having invited me, to my co-speakers today. I really learned a lot. The opening talks this morning also were quite wonderful. Having a last name of Z, I'm used to speaking last, which means I'm also accustomed to everyone having already said everything that I might have thought about saying, so that therefore I, generally speaking, try to start by thinking through what will everyone else have said. Reinhold Katz this morning and my colleague and friend Martin Kenny basically covered one portion of it, the speakers today, and some of the others' talks have covered much more of it, so I'm going to try and put this discussion in a slightly broader context. As I say, we tend to look at this coming out of California, Martin and I working together on issues of industry and software and the like, as an era of intelligent tools and systems, of which Industry 4.0 is part of that story. Now, clearly, there are an array of tales and labels. We've heard some of them now: platforms, robots, AI. The list is long, cloud computing. And lurking behind all of those tales are a series of really base technologies that are emerging with computing power, are merging with networks and the cloud. One of the projects we did decades ago was to take a look as networks were emerging, who was using them for what? What were they actually good for, and how were they changing industry and big data? And behind the tales and the base technology are an endless set of questions. When we first started working on these issues back decades ago with our friends in industry out there, they were the pioneers, and they thought they were creating a utopia. Some of them are still in the room here, but the people, Bob Noyce, Jerry Sanders, Charlie Spork, who created much of the semiconductor industry, really saw themselves creating a utopia. The skeptics were few. The skeptics are much more prevalent now. And there was also the question of whether the future of the digital era was over. Was it ending, or is it really just beginning and getting underway? So what I really want to suggest here is there are a series of stories that are intertwined and of questions that are intertwined. The technology trajectories and the business implications that we're hearing about. But equally important, the social and political disruptions and the emergence of a new global structure that would take place in any case, but in fact is being accelerated by the desire of my president to try and rip apart the existing system. So from my vantage, there really is what we would call the disruption conundrum. Can we shape the technologies, the technology trajectories, not just adapt to them? Can we create viable political economic strategies for democratic growth, addressing the disruptions in social status and structure that come along with these fundamental changes in how work is organized? And can we address the global readjustments that are necessary? So to begin with, I want to situate Industry 4.0 in this era of intelligent tools, because it's worth reminding ourselves where we fit. We would say that we're coming out of a second globalization in what we call the commodity trap, which is then resolved with intelligent tools and services with everything. Let me explain. You know, the second globalization, the first globalization is when American grain hit the world market in the 19th century. The French and Germans responded by protecting peasants and producers. The Danes fed it to cows and pigs and created dairy farming. So it was a very different kinds of technology trajectories and technology implications that were involved. Second globalization comes with the creation of the world we've known it to be, and with it came cross-national production networks, a whole range of things, a decomposition of production spread across global structures, and the recomposition of that into final products and the like. But as production was decomposed, as new producers started to enter, we started to see intense competition at each node of the production chain. And in many areas, there was intense price competition, which is why we call it the industrial commodity trap. It also, by the way, created a development ladder by which countries like China actually were able to crawl and climb out of their purely agricultural traditions. So out of that then comes the question of how do you get out of this? How do you escape from pure price competition? Obviously, as we've been hearing from our colleagues in industry, constant, very rapid product innovation, implementing new and advanced technologies, distinctive niche products, particularly here in Baden-Württemberg with the very powerful small and middle-sized family-owned kinds of companies that do distinctive, specific kinds of things. Products that are embedded in digital services. In digital service networks. The iPod in the iPhone, in fact, value is created in a different and new kind of way. The product's embedded into a service network. And platforms emerge reconfiguring competition, what we call the rise of the platform economy. So the escape from the industrial commodity trap involves intelligent tools in everything. Intelligent tools in services, intelligent tools throughout production. It's a blurring of services in manufacturing, everything from contract manufacturing, contracted R&D, contracted services. And for me, one of the dramatic changes in the place of manufacturing products as such came when I was doing a talk a number of years ago in Helsinki about cranes and ports, because there are a set of companies in Finland that in fact sell cranes and ports, and they compete with Chinese. And as we all know, the national bird of China is the crane. There are more cranes in China than there are anywhere else. They're all are building. But in fact, this company, to compete with the Chinese, had decided what they would do is embed their equipment, which was heavily about port management, into software systems for port management. And they started to say, we're going to sell you port management services. Well, you can go buy cranes from the Chinese, but if you want your ports managed, you have to buy them from us because they contain the intelligence that, in fact, allows you to manage your ports differently, which is a change in the character, the link between value creation with product, physical product, and the software basis of it. So that, in fact, the other half of this, of course, is that we're seeing, and we heard this just now, that spread of digital tools throughout production, of which Industry 4.0 is one version of that story. Industry of Things, Industrial Internet of Things, another way of expressing the same kinds of tales. Now, this morning we heard two vantages on this, and they were referred to again. I think if you haven't heard the two talks this morning, I really commend them to you. They were quite wonderful. There's a story about this coming out of software and services out of Silicon Valley, and a story coming out of the production traditions, particularly in places like Baden-Württemberg, on how these things are going to be deployed. It's not just an American vantage on this or these talks, but there's this wonderful Fraunhofer slide that the traditional strengths of Germany are having to spread over into the uses of software, and that from the American side, the traditional strengths and software networks and the like are going to be deployed in production. But the question, and I want to spend the rest of the time I have now asking what are the consequences of all this? Because the reality is we know very little about the broader social consequences of this. Most of the tales that we read are speculation, hope, and fear. And when I say that, let's use the, let's use the case of work and jobs. You're going to talk about business strategies and innovation in the next couple of days, so let's focus for a moment on work and jobs. What do we actually know? We know some jobs will be eliminated. We know some new jobs and new tasks will be created. And we know that most work will be transformed. That's not a lot. That's pretty obvious. What do we definitely not know? When? How fast is this going to happen? Some people say it's the day after tomorrow and it's a broad industrial catastrophe. Others say it's several decades and it's maybe more, and it's therefore part of a normal industrial transformation that can be managed economically and politically. We don't know what kind of jobs are going to get created or what kind of tasks are going to come out of the work that you folks are doing over the next few years. What we do know and don't know is how work is going to be transformed, how or what that will actually be. Take just long-distance drivers. Everybody's fearful in the United States that we will use automated vehicles, autonomous driving to do away with long-distance driving. Well, and truck drivers. Well, apart from the fact that most truck drivers don't like to be on the road all that much, and that equally important, there's a shortage of long-distance drivers. Let's set that aside. In fact, let's eliminate them. With e-commerce, we're going to see this vast increase in local deliveries, and drivers will do different kinds of things. You know, one of the drivers on a local vehicle drove into my neighbor's garden because he couldn't get out of the way. So maybe we ought to start worrying about skills and like in local driving rather than the autonomous drivers. So the critical point about transformation story is that there are multiple possible trajectories. And those will depend partly on demographics, and partly on what we consider to be routine and complementary skills. What is routine and what are complementary skills? Let's focus there for just a minute. The standard story in policy and economic debate is that the middle income levels, the middle job levels are being eroded. Routine is being replaced by all of these wonderful tools that we're seeing. And as a result, middle income jobs are supposedly lost. And the complementary skills gain. Upper income folks like us, we all think we know how to manage these tools and therefore gain, will be the beneficiaries. But the only problem with that story is that the erosion is taking place in different paces in different places. Therefore, the question is why? What's going on? And the reality is that there are many forms of complementary skills. There are general skills, including digital skills, not just reading and writing. And there's synthetic skills such as narrative interpretation that are case-specific to your clients' and customers' know-how. They need to know how to use your tools, and they need to understand. One of my colleagues at Berkeley built a system for prosciutto curing, because it turned out there were only two things that you needed to know. One was moisture and the other was temperature. And so he's a great semiconductor engineer, teamed up with, he's Italian, Alberto San Giovanni Vincentelli. So he teamed up with a prosciutto manufacturer, and they developed a system for automating prosciutto manufacturing, which required general skills and specific skills, which is, I think, the reality of the future and how to combine those. So the issue is that creating comparative advantage is going to be central, but there are many questions. And the questions I have are, do the deployment strategies influence our understanding of what is routine? Or conversely, does our understanding of what is routine shape how technology is deployed? The answer of what is routine on a manufacturing line will be different in Detroit and different in Germany. I'm absolutely certain of that. And having looked at these things around NC machine tools and the like differently. And as a result, here there's a need for a different kind of skill and synthetic understanding by workforces as to what's going on the shop floor than there is in the United States. Do deployment strategies determine what complementary skills are needed? The implication is if you can shape the deployment strategies of firms, you can start to shape the consequences that these things may have. And I was very appreciative of the remarks the two speakers prior to me, the two speakers from industry were remarking, do judgments about the value of workers influence deployment strategies? Are workers costs simply to be gotten rid of, or are they assets who become part of the longer-term strategy of companies? If they're assets, you deploy technologies quite differently. And that's why Northern Europe, Germany in particular, Baden-Württemberg in specific, is so interesting to a number of us who work in these areas. There are alternative deployment strategies. And the question is, how do you deploy technology to preserve skills and preserve products that embed skills? As I like to say, and overstating this, you know, Germany, in fact, and Baden-Württemberg has very little to sell except skills and embedded skills. So if you develop strategies that do away with skills, there's not a whole lot left. So that from an American standpoint, how do we push ourselves onto that trajectory rather than a different one? So back to the beginning, the stories of technology trajectories, there's social and political disruptions, and there's what I would call the third globalization now, not just because of the destructive actions and strategies in the current administration, but the emergence of China, the emergence of Asia, are changing the way in which the global system will work. But the challenge today is that more is at stake than just economic interests. Economic transformation always means social disruption. You know, it's only in economics textbooks that it's bloodless. Economic growth and transformation over the centuries actually is involved with conflict and often violence. And the question is, how do you manage that? You need political and social bargains that are required for growth. The winners have to be allowed to win so they can generate growth for the society. But the losers, if they are simply pushed aside, will in fact try and block those changes because they will lose. Remember, never forget, the Luddites were right. They lost. The societies may have gained, but they lost, and therefore the question is, how do you handle that? But creating bargains in this era of intelligent tools and systems, I think, will be is very hard. And part of the reason is it's not just balancing the economic interests of winners and losers, but how do you maintain the respect, social identity, and position of those whose jobs have been changed and who require new kinds of skills and new kinds of positions? I think that's quite evident if sitting in Germany. I mean, even the reintegration of East and West Germany involved exactly that kind of social displacement and social reorientation, and was, I think, part of the difficult task that was involved. So as we come toward conclusions, these stories of Industry 4.0, production, work, society, are intertangled with resolutions of social political disruptions and of the global status and position and structure that's going to follow. Just to remind you that from my vantage as I look at this, we're talking about this era in a third globalization, the 19th century with ships bringing American grain across the ocean, the post-World War II era, the 21st century. So in conclusion, I would say the real challenge for this era, for Industry 4.0 and all of its cousins, is how do you have growth with equity? How do you sustain the growth of employment and productivity to assure expanding real incomes of the citizens, which is a sentence that Laura Tyson, Steve Cohen mentioned, and I wrote in a piece for a presidential commission 3 decades ago. It remains the same question. How do you, in fact, manage that? And how do you do it maintaining democratic normalcy and stability? Those are the challenges. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Seisman, for this new angle as well, which we will also get to in our Q&A session in a second. But we heard that, unfortunately, our minister has another appointment, but we would like to say see you soon and thank you. So I think we have a small thank you for you before you go.
So we were so warmly welcomed by you more than a year ago. You supported us very strongly in preparing for this event and now hosting us tonight here. So we thought a heart with our logo and reminds you of the conference. And if you don't like the conference, just eat it. So that's the... I heard it tastes very well.
I like the conference and I will eat it. So I wish you all very interesting days here in the heart of the automotive industry in Baden-Württemberg, we have a lot of challenges, but I think we have much more opportunities.
Thank you very much. You have to hang it around your neck. Thank you very much. So, you can stay on stage if you like, because now it's time for our Q&A session, so please, all our other free speakers, come on stage. Hello. So you can already think about questions for our speakers, if you like, in this short little break. So welcome again on stage. So before I maybe have, first I would like to ask you, is there straight away a question to one of our speakers? You first have to. Okay, thank God I have some. So, Mr. Seisman, you just gave us a little bit of a different angle as well, that it's about the people industry 4.0. And we also heard that I would have liked to ask, obviously, Mrs. Hofmeister-Kraut as well, a couple of questions, but that is not possible anymore to get her perspective on this. But for you, are we maybe forgetting people in this whole process of Industry 4.0?
Well, there's a risk that we will, but I think that, in fact, certainly at the national level, the German government is actually paying attention to that. I think industry, you know, I would love to see strategies and consulting strategies that promote the fact that competitive advantage can only be created with skills, with paying attention to worker assets and the like. So I think this issue of how do you deploy technology with its consequences for workforces is an absolutely crucial question over the next years.
You said that Trump, sorry, you were before at Festo.
I were with both. So.
That Trump is doing a lot together jointly with their employees. Is there less fear and scaredness in your company maybe towards Industry 4.0?
That's hard to say because I don't have a comparison in the actual state of the process. But what we see is if you start a discussion about digitalization and about the development of skills and new possibilities, careers also, then people get more involved and get motivated in contributing something to that big transformation process. Because I think if you don't do it, this would be the biggest error in this system. You have to take people along on that journey, and you have to start with communication and then involve them into the doing, into the daily doing, and you have to explain them what digitalization means for their surrounding in the company.
So we heard a couple of examples what you are doing. How is it at Festo? What are you doing to embrace this change and to also get your employees on board?
But there are different dimensions of the change. I mean, for us, we sell automation and we sell productivity for the customers. And productivity comes from our two corners. The one is our components, the technology. The other is the human. We have our own separate part, which is called Festo Didactic, focusing on learning, educating people, and that comes together in improving productivity, where always the human is in the center. So it's part also of our business, this change where digitalization helps. In the company itself, new technologies and new challenges, of course, will do some change. We do things probably less in a traditional way. We have much more technologies coming together. We have quicker cycles of learning. Knowledge is deteriorating quickly. Changeover is very, very fast. in terms of knowledge. So there is a change also in the company, how we do things, and it goes much more interdisciplinary, working in teams, working across hierarchies, and much more working towards the problem jointly rather than singular Tayloristic approach. And that's a change how we work inside the company, and that's an ongoing change too. Is there fear? Yeah, of course there's fear when there's change, but there is always, at least for the Festo side, we have a very good view where we want to go, both on the business side and also how to change and where we want to go there. So there's a lot of motivation and a lot of momentum.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience at this point? Yes. Do we have a mic? Yes. Well then, we have another one here, I think. Oh yeah.
He's my co-author on all this stuff, so we'll see whether he's going to be difficult or not.
Oh, okay. So you two are in the capital goods sector, right? And I'm wondering, as you develop your technologies for productivity, what will happen in the consumer goods sector to labor? So as you put more and more knowledge and capability in your machines, there may need to be less labor on the consumer goods side. What do you think about that proposition? I'm just putting that forward. Do you think that's a valid proposition, or I'm completely crazy?
Labor will shift, yes, you're right. Automation will move forward and labor content will shift. Will we have less labor? Probably not. Will we have different forms of labor? Probably yes. Do we know how this is going? Most likely not, but a good assumption is more towards knowledge going than handworking. So some of the sometimes miserable workplaces we will replace by automation, and it comes along that probably some of the low cost we will replace, but shifting more to knowledge workforces. And there will be probably one difference, because that happened in the industry or in the history many times. And just look, agriculture in the US changed over 150 years from being 60% of the income to, I think today is less than 4%. The big difference is the time where this will change will get shorter and shorter. And this causes probably some of social questions, how quickly workforce can change over time. And yes, we are part of that with the automation business. For us, it's a little bit different because this will be a booming thing, but we will change, we are aware that we will change some workplaces, yes.
And perhaps to add a little thing, workplaces have changed over time. Steadily changed over time, and so we will find new possibilities to work, new workplaces, new skill sets which we need for new jobs. So it's a permanent, I think, ongoing process in terms of that.
Just adding to that, do you think there will be a backlash at some stage from the sort of technology drivers in terms of taking those jobs, making jobs in a different format? You know, we're all sort of driven by the technology. The systems integrators, the service providers are pushing this, but eventually we as human beings, will just accept this technology onslaught, or will there be a backlash, do you think?
You can speak.
In some ways, Donald Trump's election is part of that backlash. It's not unique to the United States, but people, in fact, and I think an important part of this is they need whatever the reality is, however jobs move, because they will, whatever skill training we can have that means that people can be employed in new kinds of ways, there need to be a narrative that helps people understand the world that they're emerging into. And I think that an important part of all of our roles, in fact, is to try and create that narrative while at the same time create policy that allows those who are losing, because let's be clear, there are people who are being losing both in the purely economic sense and partly in the sense of what is the status or relative position of their jobs. So we have to address their understanding and their reality.
Are there any more questions? Yes, please.
Hi. I would like to put this question, which Professor John very nicely laid out in the last slide, to both of the company representatives, colleagues. And the question, and I quote, which Professor John said, do development strategies influence our understanding of what is routine? Or conversely, does the understanding of what is routine shape how technology has been deployed? So has it been the case in your environment as well? So Professor John's critical question, I would like to put forward to the two company representatives.
I think you should just repeat the question one more time. We hear it a little bit difficult.
So I think it was an interesting statement which Professor John laid out in his presentation, the last slide, in terms of critical question. And the question which he asked was, the technology deployment, had it been through the aspect of its simplicity, or has it been conversely changed on the basis of what was routine? So, you know, how was that followed?
Well, let me try and rephrase it. Okay. That is, I think the issue of what constitutes routine becomes crucial. Because anything, you know, the standard line in the discussions of technology at this point is anything that's routine can be automated. The reality is partly what are the economics of that. It's not always as obvious as that. And secondly, part of the question is what do we constitute routine? That is, how a shop floor operates. You know, is never routine. The routines may be reorganized and changed, but do you need shop floor people who in fact are able to sense and understand what's going on? In very important ways, as I was saying to Guido the other day, many years ago when we began looking at a number of these things, I visited an Italian factory. And the factory, a machine tool factory, and the machine tool company was operating at that point on the very sophisticated advanced technology called C++. But in fact, in order to engage their workforce, they had built on top of it a layer in BASIC, so that their workforce could in fact interact with the systems and didn't have to learn C++ in order to be able to infuse the operations of the system with what they saw going on. So I think it's a choice, and I think, you know, out of here, that is a choice that I hear both of you making, and is core to what I understand German strategy to be. It is not the core in the United States, so you need to come and help us convince everyone that that's a possibility.
We will do.
I'm sure you'd love to. if Donald Trump lets you in.
Yeah. Let's see. Check that out.
Did I answer your question? Okay. Are there more questions? We have time for 2 more questions. Now is the chance. Yes, please. Oh, well, if the microphone is maybe there, then you're the second. Oh, no, it's coming. The microphone's coming. Thank you.
My question would be, how is the general attitude towards this change that's going to come? Because I have the feeling people talking about a lot of uncertainty issues and they are afraid of it. When I look at change, I feel like this is an exciting time to be in the business. This is where I can change things. This is where something new is started. I'm really excited about it. But sometimes it feels like people are looking a bit like, yeah, I don't know, and we lose jobs. I look at it like, yeah, I'm going to spend more time on my boat, on the balcony, and whatever, and still make money after all. So how is your view on that change that's going to come?
Well, my perception is, yes, there are exciting times, at least from a technological side, and as an engineer, we are very motivated to drive the change with high speed. But what we see, if we start projects, try to bring in new technologies, we often get stuck because people don't understand the reason why, have fear from the outcome, and we have to take them with us on that journey. That's what I said also in my talk. We have to explain, we have to drive communication top-down, as well as we have to apply formats where people can get into interaction and explain each other what's the consequence out of this digitalization strategy. And I think, at least at Trumpf, this is a thing that's working for us. Don't know, how is it at Festo?
There's certainly quite some uncertainty, particularly the early times of Industry 4.0, where it was consisting of slides and not much behind that. What does it mean? How does it affect me personally? So there was certainly uncertainty, and there's uncertainty as soon as it comes to job and personal security in the job world. The more you go, and what Ms. Nestor said, to the technology guys, the more happy they are and see the possibilities of the technology. The more you go to workplaces which have more repetitive structure, the more uncertainty is how will that be in future. Yes, and our job on management in the company is to bridge it, to find ways that we jointly move forward to inform, to educate, and also to train people for the next challenge. And Festo was didactic. We built on that for many years as an integral part for our business and for our internal education, that lifelong learning is an integral part.
Okay, thank you very much. So I got the sign that we now are all hungry and thirsty, I think. I would like to say a very big thank you to all our speakers here on stage. And I think also for you, there is a little something. The surprise was already taken. Thank you very much, Frank Melzer, Volker Nestle, John Seisman.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh! I also get one. And thank you very much for coming, for listening, and for your questions. I hope we all have a nice evening now together, and with finger food and some drinks. And thank you for coming. And tomorrow and the day after, a very good conference day. So thank you very much.